Welcome back to part two of the series that we've done on courage. Our last episode was how a man shows up if he doesn't have courage. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about how a man behaves differently when he has got courage. And we want to segue. So if you listen to our previous podcast, you'll know that we talked about all of the ways that a guy shows up when he's lacking courage. And these were things like excuse making, dependency, procrastination, avoidance. So if you're a man who's showing up with some of those things in your life, listen in. This is really going to help you because what we've observed, Pete and I, as we've been in the trenches for the last couple of years, helping men cultivate way more courage in their lives, their lives have changed enormously. So what we're going to do, again, we're going to be like doing an autopsy, what it looks like for guys when they have really started to, just show up with way more courage. Anyone, did you want to share before we dive in?
If you haven't listened to the part one, stop this, go listen to part one. A big part of our model, what we help guys cultivate and discover is your brain, your body, and your backbone. And then part of the backbone principle, there is we have pillars to that, right? One of the pillars is courage. So this is a massive fundamental for a guy to embody, for him really to turn up to his full potential as a man.
Yeah, I think that bringing it back to the model, Pete, good shout because what Pete said there, brain, body, and backbone. This is part of backbone. But say you're a guy and you don't have your body in check, you don't have your energy in check. Taking massive risks with your soul, having backbones, taking courageous action, you haven't got the energy for it, and you'll probably say something like, "I can't be asked." Part of what we'll talk about on today's session, some of the guys recently have been mending relationships in their lives and changing the way that they show up in their, not just their relationships, but their past relationships. But it takes a shitload of courage to do that. But behind courage sits things like energy. Because, like, for example, if you are tired, burnt out, hungry, tired, lonely, and you have to be courageous, it's so much more difficult. So these things do all come together, and this is what we've come to realize with guys over the last couple of years. You can't have one without the other. For sure, there's going to be times where you got no energy, but at the same time, equally, it helps you have it day in day out. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we mentioned that before we dive in.
Yeah, I just got a quick share on this actually because this is like really relevant to my personal life right now.
Mhm.
So I got some personal shit going on. Two members of my family have got cancer. Both we found out, both of them in the last 2 weeks. Right, so it's like bomb bomb, two punches to the gut. One of them is my gran. 2 weeks ago, she's absolutely fine. She's normal. Literally in the space of a week, A&E, and now I've gone out to yesterday. I went out to see her, and like she's literally lying on her deathbed, and I had to have a fair fucking amount of courage. I'll be honest, to just to show up. I had to be strong. Yesterday, I had to be there for my dad. It's his mum, and for me to really show up courageously as his son, but also selfishly, I wanted to. I didn't want to ask my gran just like surface level questions like "How are you doing? Are you comfortable? How's the food?" Just like the normal surface level questions that you might ask someone that's in hospital. I actually wanted to ask the difficult shit to my gran, and it took a lot of courage for me to go, oh, right, I'm gonna do this because this could be like the last moments I've got with her. I'm so fucking glad I did. I am so glad that I went there. And I went into they weren't like really difficult questions, but there was like this is probably not normal questions that someone might ask someone that's lying on their deathbed, and I'm glad that I did. And then secondly, after that, um, I, I opened up to my dad, and I'd said some things to my dad that maybe like a lesser me, a man without that courage, wouldn't have said it. Would have kept it inside. Would have just gone. I think that, but I'm not going to say it because I'm just a bit. I don't know. I'm a bit scared about saying those sorts of things to my dad, and
Mm.
I'm really really glad I did. And this is a massive, and I can see this in my own growth, as a guy, and embodying the backbone element of the model that we help guys discover. I can see that there, and how that I've used that over the last couple of days.
Yeah, man. Oh, part of me is like, what did you say? But it's just like, let's, if you wanted to share, that's good. But I was, it was, we were delivering on Heroic this morning. So we have a community program where guys come on and learn for 15 minutes every single day. And we're talking about the king, warrior, magician, lover. So the king archetype, there's actually a podcast we did on it a while ago. And one of the ways that a king shows up in his life is he makes peace with his parents, and part of making peace with your parents is courageous. It's hard, it is really hard. Like Pete said, then is like asking your dad or your mum a question that you're worried about the answer. You almost brace for the impact, like, oh my god, what's he going to say? Is this going to be hurtful? And I remember asking my dad what happened in the marriage. Like, I remember we were wallpaper in my office in Fast, and I was like, Dad, what happened between you and Mum? And I thought I knew, and holy shit, it was like paradigm shifting about what he told me afterwards. And I was like, oh my god, I always envisaged him as the guy that walked out, and he was the villain, because that's how he was painted by my mum. Not, she didn't mean to do that, but that's how I absorbed it as a child. And that was a courageous conversation because it shifted so much in my world. And that was, again, it was courageous. If I wasn't in the right space, if I wasn't showing courage, I wouldn't have done that. And I think we spoke to a lot of guys this year. So many of them haven't got a healthy relationship with the parents. And what I mean by this, and I think this is really important to remember as we're talking about this today, is like, when we'll talk about reshaping relationships, is sometimes you can't change the relationship itself. You might, a relationship is dependent on two people, but you can still have peace within the relationship with that relationship. So I might not get on with my dad, for example. I do, but might not get on with my dad, but I can come to terms with that. I can be at ease with that. I can reframe how I see that. And that's what I have control over. And that takes a shit ton of courage to be able to go in and do the work on that. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said here. So I think let's dive in, Pete, and let's look at how a man behaves when he he creates courage in his life. And I think this is what's really important. How do you behave differently when you are courageous versus cowardice? So the first one's proactivity, and this is I think proactivity can sometimes be triggering for some people. And Pete, I think you trigger people with this. You're a very proactive man and you come across as urgent. And men who are not urgent, Pete triggers them because he is very, very urgent and proactive. And I remember me and Poppy speaking to Pete recently when he was going through some of his struggles and challenges, and Poppy said, "Well done, man, meeting it head on." He was like, "Yeah, that's how I do things." And it's proactivity. So the way this shapes up is, instead of avoidance, a proactive person seeks out challenges and addresses issues head on. So it's like, I'm going to get in this, I'm not going to avoid it. Versus the guy who's like, okay, it's a challenge here, I'll sweep it under the rug, I won't talk about it. If I totally just damp it down, it'll go away. And that's the difference between those two guys. So think about this: like, how do you approach or do you avoid the challenges in your relationship, business, fitness? Like, what's coming up for you when I'm sharing that, Pete?
Yeah. This is what comes up for me here is I was actually thinking about reactive and responsive, and this kind of like proactiveness does like interlink with that. But proactiveness is like the warrior mode. It's the guy who's really embodying his like warrior archetype, He's just like he's driven, he's focused, he's proactive. It's very, very attractive trait. A as a leader, but B just in your relationships with your partners and spouses and so on. This is fucking attractive. A man that is proactive in his endeavors. Yeah, I love this. I like pride myself on being proactive.
Yeah, and I think sometimes if you're a man who gets triggered by this, it's you'll think someone's too urgent or pushy. I think that's what will happen with a lot of guys who are not proactive. The way that you will see a man who is proactive, you'll go, "Oh, he's pushy." He's not that you've been called pushy. Pete. I'm not. I'm just saying that this is likely how you're viewing people in this space. Um, he urgent is another way to describe proactivity. He's like urgent. Oh, yeah, I've got shit to do, and my dad is like that. My dad's super pro. My dad is the most proactive guy, and actually, this was a shadow for me because I was way more like my mum, which was the opposite of proactive. I was quite avoidant, and it's been a big work on for me. That's when Tom, my coach, said, you've been reluctant, Ben." And I'm like, "Oh fuck, this is another shade of avoidant behavior." So the way this might show up for you as a man, avoidant behavior is like you've got loads of things that are just left not done, and you haven't done them because you're moving towards those challenges. So these can be things in the business, they can be things in your relationship, they can be organizing things. It's a real work on for it's been a work on for me, and I've mastered a lot of it as well.
Yeah,
Um,
the next one here interlinks with proactivity, and it's decisiveness. So, like being a decisive individual, you make decisions promptly, um, and you take timely actions instead of procrastinating. So, like, decide on shit, get after it. It's like, do you know what? I've absolutely witnessed this with people that I work with that are extremely effective, or that I know are very successful. Is that things happen very, very quickly. There's no like, I'm not like waiting a week to get something sorted, or if like I want to book a meeting in with someone, like the most effective people that I work with, like we've booked the coffee, we've booked the meeting within, it's in like a day, or it's in like a fucking 10 minutes, it's done. It's like boom, 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 done. Yeah, I want the meeting, boom, boom, done, in. Net, and then it's forgotten about, rather than it's like taking a week to organize a meeting, all these messages going back and forward, and and all this time it takes, and so on and so on. Right? That's like decisiveness. Just decide whether you want that thing, and then go and get it. Right? Decide where you're going to go and take the missus out for some food, and then just go and fucking do it. Right? Just decide, rather than having three or four different options and waiting on it. That's not how a courageous man acts.
yeah, and I think we've talked about this in shades of relationship stuff as well. Is that what the the masculine decides? It's the doer, and the feminine is the done too. Remember, it's not about male and female; it's about masculine and feminine. And so, for a guy who's not decisive, he's always waiting for someone else to make the decision. So therefore, he always feels done too. This is something that I think that has been a big one for a lot of men I've worked with, is like just making a decision. Like, just, hey man, just making a decision on it. And because I'm in a coaching position in Awaken Man, I'll have guys message me, and then they'll say to me, da, 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 I want to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, what are you asking me for? Are you asking me for permission? Are you asking me to decide for you? And they're like, yeah, I can see what I'm doing here. I'm abdicating. And I think this is what even in my life, this is something that I've been working on.
Mm,
Decisiveness is that
yeah,
make a fucking decision, Ben.
yeah.
And it's big. It's big. It's pervasive as well. If you don't make decisions as a man, you will always slip into being the victim of your circumstance, not the owner of your life. And again, we've covered a podcast all on this. Is that you make a life by design, not by default. And what I mean by this is that when you're decisive, you can choose what you want and then make your circumstances fit what you want. If you don't decide, what happens is circumstance makes your life the way it is. And when I really understood that, like that's, that what I've just shared to you is a life changing concept for me. It was like until I decide, no, this is what I want, this is what I want to go for. And we've talked about this at length. Whenever in my life I've truly decided on doing something, I've done it, I've achieved it, I've made it happen. And the hardest thing for me has always been decided. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
this
yeah, it's
I think this decisiveness one is probably, like, we've got a list here that we're going to go through, but this is probably one of the biggest one for a man just to go, do you know what, I'm just going to embody that. Like, where in my life am I not making decisions? Is it that my missus literally makes all the decisions on where we're going on holiday, where we're going for food, where we're taking the kids, what we're doing on the weekend, what type of food we've got in the cupboards, yada yada, and so on and so on and so on. Like, is that the case? Or where am I just not making a decision? And like Ben said a minute ago, looking for external validation on
yeah.
making that decision.
Do you know what was a big one for me actually that came up recently? Is, and I notice this in my relationship, is that I pose a statement as a question sometimes. I think out loud, and it's not helpful for my relationship. And I, instead of saying, "Oh, I'm going to change indie," for example, I'll go, "Oh, shall I change indie?" I'll
Yeah.
pose it. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm fucking going to do it. But I found myself asking the question, and I was like, "Holy shit, I can!" And as soon as I saw it, and guys, listen for this. Now I've pointed it out, you'll hear it way more. Is that I was posing statements as questions, just thinking out loud. Then Poppy felt like she had to make a decision for me, and I was like, I was getting coached, and I was like, shit. And anyway, I realized it. Oh my gosh, I do it all the time. So she's constantly thinking she has to make decisions, but she doesn't. I've already made the decision. I'm just posing it as a question.
Oh
So
mate,
be mindful of that.
that's a really big one, because it
Yeah.
sounds micro, and it is micro, but that repeated and repeated and repeated, and then it's like, I swear my missus wears the trousers.
Oh my
And
god, man. Yeah.
it's because all these like little
Yeah.
micro, just tiny little micro decisions, and it's like mini validation. Should I do that? Should I do that?
Yeah, it's like it's like, and Robert Glover talked about this is the difference between love and dominance and seeking permission. So it's instead of we talked about this at length. It's like I fucked this up big time when I first did it. It's like instead of saying, "Oh, do you want a foot massage?" It's pass me your feet, and giving her a foot massage. So you're giving her love and dominance at the same time, and that's how she feels led back into a feminine. And so for guys listening in, decisiveness, it's statements of intent versus posing questions. So that's like a nuance under all that. That'll really help you. That'll really help you. Trust me. When I've realised this, things I'm on a big shift in this in my relationship at the moment, being the decisive man.
Yeah,
So
guys, let's together as a team. Let's make a rule. Like, here's the rule: when I haven't made a decision, then I make the decision within 2 minutes.
yeah, yeah,
Just
I
have
think that's
just make just it, like, if that affects your life, if you know that you do this, just make a rule that I need to make that decision within 2 minutes. Whether that is, do I want to have the meeting with that person or not, or do I want to book the restaurant, or whatever that looks like. Just make a rule, because then it becomes a behavior.
Yeah, I think what you're doing then is conditioning yourselves that you make decisions quickly.
Yeah.
It's I think that's what if you start speeding up the rate at which you make decisions, you'll feel a lot less stress. You'll fear the future less. And I've actually got a theory on this: is where anxiety comes from for a lot of guys. Guys push off a lot of decisions into the future, and they do this on a micro level all the way through the day, the week, the month, and then they develop this anxiety because they fear the future because that's where they've got to make all their decisions. That's one of
Mm.
my beliefs about anxiety is like, well, I put off everything into the future, so no fucking wonder I fucking fear it. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely worth checking in with how you do that. Okay, let's move it on. The next one was independence, and when I wrote this, I think there's two important things. Is that the ultimate goal is not independence; it's interdependence, where you have healthy reliance on other people in your life. not dependence, like codependence, toxic codependence, but you actually can have a healthy reliance on other people. But the first point of having courage is independence, because an independent person takes responsibility for their own actions. So it's like a courageous action is saying the buck stops here, and it's painful. It is painful saying, "Yeah, I own that mistake. It's wholly me." And I think there's a reason that the pain comes along with that, because if you truly have 100% responsibility, it is painful, but the pain recalibrates you way quicker than denying the pain. And what I mean by this, right? So say I don't get a piece of work done on time. Say I haven't done something that's really important. I try and blame someone else. Me pushing that pain away with the blame, it I'm actually dulling down the very thing that's going to stop that behavior in the future, which is that acute bout of fucking sort this, like what I would call healthy shame. Yeah. So what I would definitely recommend with independence, it's 100% responsibility, is saying, well, actually, yeah, I'm going to own my shit. I'm really going to own my shit, and not overly relying on others. So what you can this might look like for you in an organization is to lead up the chain. So me, Pete, and Ali had a conversation early on in the week, and Ali said something. I was like, no, no, Ali, you need to lead up the chain here. If you read Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership, it's about someone saying, no, this is my responsibility. I'm going to take responsibility instead of waiting for it to be given. And I'm not going to rely on other people. I'm going to get this done. And it's no criticism of Ali. It's in every single team. You have people that wait to be given orders instead of taking 100% responsibility. And it's courageous, because what happens is you're like, oh, well, I'm going to take responsibility here. What happens if someone tells me I'm working, put my head above the parapet, or I'm pushing way above my pay grade? Fuck them. I'd rather be working at that level rather than waiting for permission. So I
Yeah,
think this is courageous. A man shows up differently when he's being courageous and he's working above his pay grade.
yeah. The 100% responsibility is a big one in organizations. I've seen this, that uh, organizations want this. They want their team members to embody the be responsible, and it can be difficult on the outset when that's not the norm for the team members to embody responsibility, because it's difficult. But the best way to do this is not like print a bunch of like core values on the wall, like we are responsible, and give them all brochures saying, here, read our core values, that we are responsible. It's actually from you as the leader or the leadership team to be and to take responsibility in fucking everything. And then it just to be like the level of consciousness that rises through the organization as like the organization's DNA, is that is responsibility, and people will get to grips with that pretty quickly. If the leaders don't do that, then the team members won't.
Yeah. Next one, we're looking at like self confidence. Is a big part of courage, and like, people get these two, I think, a little bit mixed up: courage and confidence. And confidence is based on a result. So confidence shows up after the result, and courage is what shows up before. And this is so courage is this idea that you are going to take a punt with an unknown outcome. That's courage. And to a certain degree, self-reliance as well. I rely on myself to be able to cope with whatever happens afterwards. Whereas confidence is what happens afterwards. Believing in one's abilities and strengths, even in the face of challenges, contrasts with self-doubt. So what happens here is that you get the self-confidence after you've taken the shot. And here's how a guy shows up when he's got really high self-confidence: is that he just is so rigid and like in not rigid, but grounded in this kind of feeling of I've got this, no matter what. And I think sometimes as guys, and especially as leaders, what happens is we forget that we've done so much already. And I remind guys of this in coaching, and I'm like, dude, you're asking me about this, and like you've already built this business. Why are you asking about this little tiny thing? You've already gone and done that. How did you go and do that? Tell me. And they're like, yeah, yeah. So I just remind them of what they've already done, and then the confidence goes up and they take action. So, so what sometimes you need to do, man, is look backwards and go, hang on a second, I've got through all of these struggles and challenges in my life. What, and I believe I can't do this little thing, and I think that's a big thing for a lot of guys. So yeah, and then then what they'll say, and they'll have this narrative that they don't have self confidence, and so um,
I got one. I got
yeah,
one for the other end of the spectrum.
yeah, go for it, go for it.
So self confidence, because Ben's talking here about guys that may not have the self confidence, but then there is the other end of the spectrum where the guys are really fucking confident. They've got all that self confidence, like it goes across. It's like bordering cocky. But you can, like, I have absolutely witnessed loads and loads of guys that um seem very, very self confident, yet don't achieve the success. Don't achieve where you think they could probably get to. And a lot of the times I think that relates back to their character as to who they are, because they believe that they've got so much confidence that they don't actually have to do all the fucking hard work.
Oh
Because
yeah,
they're
yeah,
confident
great
in their
point.
ability. It's like, I'm fucking so talented. I've got so much ability. I don't need to do all the work that everyone else does. I don't need to do. So they're actually not disciplined, and they haven't got the character traits um, of a successful person. They've just got the confidence traits, and you need more than that. You can't just have self confidence.
Wow, that's good. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I think I'm like that. I was it's in the fitness world. Like I got things really quickly. In athletics, I was a very athletic kid, very talented. I trained hard, but not anywhere near what I needed to. And it was the guys that weren't talented that worked hard that are way better than me now. And that's why I
Yeah,
love the
it's like
endeavor.
you think you're too good to do all the training, and then
Yeah,
you
I
don't get
definitely
picked,
did the
and then you don't
training,
get
buddy.
picked for the team.
Yeah, but what I think, like I'm doing my recent endeavor for this is running. So I was like, do you know what? If I was to focus in on one thing that I really enjoy, and I'm enjoying the endeavor of running at the moment because the way it works for my lifestyle, it's not the best thing for your body in terms of how you look. People keep telling me this. Pete loves resistance training. I love resistance training, but I'm not enjoying the gym here as much. But I love the running here, and I've got to do so much mileage to get my body to where it needs to be able to do the times I want. And it's a real commitment. It's a real commitment, and I can't rely on talent. So it's a real endeavor, and it'll show up in every shade of your business.
Yeah, because if you build self confidence through acts of courage, and then you've got the discipline to continue doing the fucking hard work, and just like check your ego aside, then you forge an incredible character.
Yeah, the best. Going a little bit off on a tangent, but I think it's really important. Self confidence is built through self restraint. Now, this is something that you might not have heard before. We've talked about on the podcast before. Is that Barry Michaels talked about this, and it's true self confidence is built through self restraint. Now, what does this actually mean? It means trusting that in any given circumstance, that you will choose the growth decision versus the comfort decision, and you'll back yourself. That's where true, and it's actually you just trust your own word because you don't give in to the easier decision, and you'll choose the hard path again and again and again. So I probably could do a whole podcast on this, But that was enlightening for me as well. But how does a guy show up differently with self confidence? Like, how does he behave differently? Well, first and foremost, he's not erratic, and he's grounded, and he makes decisions, and he's cool and calm. You know, sometimes when you see people making decisions, you can see that they make them from very shaky stances. And when a guy's got really high self confidence, he backed himself. He oozes that self confidence, and then also people rally around him as well. If you've got someone who's like, right, we're going this way. I've got conviction in what I'm saying. People just follow you. And I was speaking about this the other day. One of my first ever mentors, he had such high level of self confidence because his conviction on what he said was so high. So if you want to be a good leader, you've got to have the self confidence.
Yeah.
Let's move to the next one. Assertiveness. Do you want to go through this one, Pete?
Yeah, we've actually got one before we've missed. It's accountability. And this is a big one to talk about. So in like self accountability. So instead of you making excuses as to why you're not achieving something, or to why you're not just going to go and do something, like the easiest example we always bring up is the gym. My leg hurts. Oh, I'm tired from bad night's sleep. So it's an excuse not to go and do the thing that you said you're going to go and do. But like having accountability counts towards, you grow in the background here. So an accountable person, he will admit to making mistakes, and he'll take responsibility for his actions. So
Yeah,
this is
I
an
think.
important one, and a lot of guys, I find this actually a lot. We get this question a lot. How can I be self accountable? Because so in our programs, we help keep guys accountable. It's part of like being in our world, is that we help keep guys accountable. But the ultimate training is to be self accountable. That's the ultimate self mastery, is to not need others to keep you accountable.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, and like just to open up a dialogue around it is that you have clients, and I've had clients where it's like, oh yeah, you need to hold me accountable, and I'm like, no, 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 this is not how it works, brother. I'm not holding you shit. You're holding yourself accountable in this container. And I think there's a massive difference is that what we actually often look to do as men is we abdicate accountability. It's like, well, I'll pay Pete for his coaching, so then he's going to kick me up the arse when I'm not doing things. And that is being parented. That's not accountability. That's having someone else. That's giving away your personal power. So think about this, where you've done this with a trainer in the past, whether it's a business mentor. If I pay so and so, then I'm entitled to them kicking me up the arse and pushing me. And like that's not how it works. And if you've had someone tell you that that's accountability, that's not how it works long term. It doesn't work because in the absence of that person's energy, you go back to your default. It's unethical. The efficacy of someone creating accountability with you like that is bullshit. It doesn't work. If they're chasing you, it doesn't work long term. So if you spot that in a program that you're in, or a way of, if you're managing like that, where you're chasing people up all the time, long term, it doesn't work. I feel quite passionate about that because I used to have a lot about it in the gym. Um, Next one's assertiveness. I think this is a big one.
This is a massive
And
one for a lot of guys to be able to express what they fucking want. Right, to be able to express what they fucking want without worrying about what other people might think or feel.
yeah, um, we talked about it on the last podcast, but I think it's more relevant now. Is that I hadn't made a decision about going on my retreat based on what I thought other people would think, and
There you go.
expressing my own needs and desires. My desire was to go on this retreat, but I hadn't expressed it because it went against the rules or the norms. The norm was like, okay, this is my week. This is how I go about my week. And I think this is what happens for a lot of guys sexually, in business, in relationships, in friendships. They don't express how they want that relationship or that intimacy to look like, and then they get pissed off and resentful, and that's when they become aggressive.
Yeah, because so assertiveness, to be clear, is not aggression. It is not aggressive. Like assertiveness is that there may be a form of like powerful anger there, um, used in the correct manner, but this is not aggression. And the other person who is on, if there is someone on the receiving end of this, they will be able to feel that this is not aggression. That you are just standing there in what you want as a guy.
Yeah, yeah. And how does a guy behave if he's assertive of his own needs? Well, this is how he'll show up. He won't permission seek. Oh, do you mind if I? Oh, do you mind if I? Do you mind if I? Far, Mike, you'll hear this now. Do you mind if I get a drink? Do you mind if I take a shit? And like it, I say that, but that was actually the words that came out of one of our clients' mouths. He asked his wife if he could take a shit. I'm like, I'm like, dude, you're asking for permission to go and do some like, a normal human bodily thing. And he said, honestly, man, I caved in when I realized I just asked. I'd I'd sought permission to go to the toilet from my partner. It's got that bad, and I was like, dude, and it's funny because it's the same guy. I asked him to come on a like I come on an event, and he said, "Oh, my wife would kill me." It's
Yeah.
constantly, and so guys, this is the way that you're going to be show up if you haven't got assertiveness is permission seeking, but then assertiveness is saying, no, this is what I want. How can we make this work? And can you hear the level of conviction in my voice? Is like, right, okay, I'm going here. We're having sex. This is what we want to do. How do we make that happen? It's differently like, oh, can we maybe, have a bit of sexy time, next Thursday? It just it's so it's, but
Oh
that's
yeah,
it's
that's
just
sexy. She's got the knickers
it's
straight
not
off.
sex. It's so yes, yeah, it's so not sexy. Um, I think that there was, I think that it's a work on for me. I think it's a work on for a lot of guys. I'm
Yeah,
very,
absolutely. I think a lot of guys. I think a lot of guys lose this in relationships. And I mentioned this the other days. Like it might be at the start of a relationship, there's a little bit of this, but when you get maybe very comfortable in your relationship, you can lose a lot of your assertiveness, and then you stop expressing what you need and what you desire, and then ultimately, deep down, like resentment comes up for you because you're not kind of getting what you want. And it might be simple things. It might be really fucking simple things. It might be just going out with the guys for a drink or whatever. It might be really really simple things, but you're just not expressing that. And over time, it becomes a really fucking big problem.
yeah. I think that mine was even little things like dressing really well. Like I really enjoy nice clothes, and I kind of got a little bit lost in that, saying that my own needs. Where I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't know. And I examined that. And I was like, where did that come from? And actually, a need of mine is to have nice clothes and feel good about what I'm wearing. And at some point, about when I became a dad, I just kind of lost that a little bit, and it was self care. So I think it comes in different shades. Like it might, for different guys, it'll be different things. Next one is optimism towards opportunities. So when a guy is courageous, he's able to see the good and the potential opportunity, even if he's had multiple failures, because it takes a shitload of courage to see the opportunity, even if you've had multiple failures. So this is the likelihood in business. You're going to take 9 shots and only one, and the 10th is going to work. It really work. And Pete, probably can attest to this as well. You're constantly taking shots. You're constantly calibrating. But if I was to get all pessimistic and bitchy and nothing ever works for me, is that I would never get to that 10th shot first and foremost. But I've got to have the courage to say, do you know what? I'm going to keep getting up. I'm going to keep dusting myself down and keep taking a shot and getting back up, dusting myself down. It takes courage to do that. And I think this is what happens to so many entrepreneurs is they haven't got the courage to say, "Oh, I'm just going to get back up and go again." And they
Yeah.
never get to that 10th shot, which is going to work. And there's a good question, like if you were to ring 50 people and you were going to get 49 knocks back, not 49 no's, and the 50th would be a yes, would you just pick up the phone? And I think this is rife.
Yeah, it is. And this was on another guy's podcast that I listened to the other day, and he said this, and I was like, "Fucking right, mate. You are spot on." And it's when you take these opportunities and they don't work out, and then you quit. It's in that moment when the 99% of people quit, and you need to pride yourself on not quitting, because it's in those moments where it is the one percenters, it is the top performers that will keep fucking going. And it might not be the 10th, 11th, or 12th. It might be the fucking 67th shot that you take that pays off. And it is knowing that the time that you are about to quit is when most people quit. So
Mm.
don't. You have to be optimistic. You have to have that growth mindset.
I think we'll do one more. We'll go into a lot of depth into like emotional stability, because I think this is something that is really attractive for a man with courage. And how do you behave when you've got emotional stability? And there was a message that Yaseen put up in the group last night in the Awaken Man Project group. So he had some storm damage to one of his factories, and I would never have known to how he showed up on our Monday conversation. Super dialed in, didn't know, didn't had anything that was going on. Like he's not that he was being emotionally stoic. He expressed it, but he carried on and moving forwards. This cost his family business, enormous amount of money, and he was still quiet, confident. What needed to be done. So a man with an emotional stability is he maintains his composure even in the face of challenging or adverse situations. So there's a couple of guys actually, and this is something that I want to go in and do a podcast on. This is that they're having immense struggles around having custody of their kids. It's
Yeah.
heart wrenching. It's really. I know. I even talk about it. I just can't imagine it. It's like really. I'm very very fortunate. Like that. I see my kids every day. I can't even imagine how difficult that must be. But it's being able to go through that and still be able to not use that as an excuse for not moving forwards in the business. And that is a man with courage.
Yeah.
He's
Or
like,
not even just in the business, just in life.
yeah, yeah,
Not just in business. It doesn't. You don't have to have your own business, but just like to be able to continually progress forward and drive forward, even with a load of shit going on.
yeah, yeah. And I think there's a real nuance to this. It's not being emotionally stoic. It's not it's not stiffening up and not sharing, as you heard Pete sharing. What he's not holding that back. He's not pushing it down. He's saying, "Hey, listen, this is really hard. I'm going through it. It's emotional. I'm having some deep conversations with my family members," but he's still moving forwards, same pace as ever. And so I think there's a real nuance with this, guys. Is emotional stability. A guy with courage, the way he behaves is he's able to simultaneously feel those feelings and keep moving forwards.
Yeah, it's being able to manage the calm and the chaos at the same time.
Oh, nice.
That's strong, isn't it? Fucking, I might even write a
Yeah,
tweet. I
yeah,
might fucking print that one.
yeah. It is. It is because business is the shit fight. It is, and it is. It goes up and it goes down, but it's
Yeah,
not linking your emotional state with the up and down of business. And so, yeah, I think we are good at doing that. Like, Pete and I are both very, very good at doing that. I'm amazing at that. But it's
I think
it's
I believe that emotional stability, emotional regulation, like the mastery of this, like a guy being able to understand and regulate his own emotions is one of the most powerful character traits like any man can possess. And being bragging about what we do on Heroic Man and Awakened Man. This is our master skill in getting guys
Yeah,
emotionally regulated and them understanding what's going on in their brains.
I agree. And like just linking it back to how does that make a guy courageous? You know, how does he show it? It does. It takes a great deal of courage to be stable in, and it is intertwined. When a guy is stable, emotionally stable, he can take bigger shots, and like if you're able to maintain stability even when you're feeling super angry or super demotivated, and you can still take those big shots. That's courage. And sometimes a big shot might be getting out of bed if you're feeling really low. That could be a big. I just want to clarify that as well. A big shot for someone on a day where they're getting over suicide could be getting out of bed.
Fucking
Equally,
right.
it could.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just to go on.
Yeah, I'm all on board with that, and yeah, something this goes because we all have bad days. I've talked about this on the podcast. There's been days where I've had some really really down days, but sometimes if it's like everything's not going swimmingly, I'm like, Pete, what can I do? It's just like 40%. What's just 50%? Just I don't have to be 100% today. Just get the 50% done, or the 40%, or maybe it's a 60% version. Just a
Yeah,
step forward, and to keep
and that's
moving.
your 100% on that day, and so I think that's something that's really important, is that you're getting out of bed, making that first phone call if it's a new business, asking that first person out on a date, going on a new date, recalibrating a relationship with your partner. That could be a big thing for you. So don't judge your big goal, your big shot. Guys, that was how a man shows up and behaves when he does have courage. And that forms part of the model of backbone, which we teach on Awaken Man. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast and you are enjoying what you listen to, we have a program where we help men do all of the things above. We do it in a relational way. So we teach, we have guys share and push each other and challenge each other. And the best part about this is that we have something called an open week, a breakthrough week, where you can come and experience this. You can be amongst the men that we coach every single day, and you can have experience of what Pete and I and Yaseen do on Awaken Man. And here's the invitation. If you're enjoying the podcast, head on over to menspod.com, and if you join the Facebook group, promptly we have a breakthrough week coming up which you're able to join. So head on over to menspod.com, come and join the breakthrough week. We will be going through part of the model, which so you can learn a little bit more in depth, and you can actually get some conversations going with other men doing this work. Other than that, thank you so much for being on here on the Two Courage podcast. Anything to share before we shoot, Pete?
No,
See
crack
you on
on,
the next
guys.
podcast, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
see you
you.
on the next one.